everyone. Welcome back to Shadows of Progress. Today we're talking about health, but not in the usual try harder, eat better way. We're talking about how the places we live in quietly shape our choices every single day. My guest today is Sam Skemp, associate producer of the Blue Zone series, which looked at longevity through community, environment, and design rather than just discipline. Sam, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so let's start off with the blue zones themselves. So, when people hear blue zones, they often think of diet or self control. But what are blue zones actually about? And why does this way of living help people stay naturally healthy without constantly trying to?
Great question. So, just to kind of frame it, blue zones are these places around the world where people are considered consistently living into their 90s or 100 years old. I'm working with National Geographic and demographers, scientists. The team has found five of these places. So, there's Loma Linda, California, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. And so in all of these areas, these people are living a long time, but the key is they're not really thinking about living a long time. They didn't wake up one day and say, I want to get on this exercise program or I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to lift weights. They just live in these cultures and environments where health and longevity ensue rather than something they're trying to pursue. So they're eating plant-based diets, they're gathering with their friends and family, they're often living with their relatives, they're getting out every day and walking in some way. They have a sense of purpose, and all of these things are great, and we can try in like the West to try to latch onto these ideas and implement them into our own lives. But it's better if you create this environment and culture where these lessons and experiences just kind of ensue rather than something you're pursuing. And so that's how they've created this system where they're living into their 90s or 100s.
So, do you think this mindset shift, like specifically thinking about the long term, is what most health programs miss?
Yeah, I think they often focus too much on the individual rather than an environment. So, what might work for you if maybe you do need a supplement of some sort might not work for 100 other people that are trying to get healthy. So, it's kind of this like overall view of what makes a population healthy, and that's changing the environment and setting it up so that health ensues rather than something they're pursuing on a day to day basis. So maybe a diet would work for one individual, but it's not going to work for a bunch of people over the long run. So how do you kind of set up that mindset to look towards the future and really make drastic changes for everyone?
Okay, so blue zones often say the environment matters more than willpower. So, why does where we live shape long term health more than motivation? And how do you think that plays out differently in natural blue zones versus highly planned places like Singapore?
Yeah, so habits and staying consistent with something, it's kind of like a muscle and it fatigues over time. So there's these things called recidivism curves, which show with like 100 people start a diet or supplement. Within 3 months, they've probably all fallen off, unless except for like three or four people. So you see that especially in the new year, a bunch of people decide they're going to get in the gym, but by February, March, half, if not less, of those people have continued to do it. So it's just not something you can really set up to do. You fail almost every time. So that's why the environment's so important to set that up for the long-term health. Even if somebody has the best intentions possible and they try super hard, so many things in life come up. So how do you set up that environment where it just really fosters that those nudges and those we don't like to use the word habits because we don't think habits work, but it fosters those habits to create them as more of a lifestyle or part of your day-to-day life. So you're not even thinking about it. You're just walking to get your groceries or you're walking to school, you're meeting friends for coffee just because it's part of your day-to-day life and not something you're really consciously putting that effort in towards. And differently in the blue zones versus some place like Singapore. So the blue zones, it was really ingrained into their cultures and their lifestyles over generations and often into their environment. So people in Sardinia are living up in the highlands, these beautiful mountain towns where they're shepherds and most of their food is what they garden and they have to walk to get to their friend's house. They don't have a vehicle to get around. The local shops are within walking distance of their home. So that's why it's set up so well for them. And it's just, they don't even think about it. And then places like Singapore. So Singapore in 2023, 2024, we named as a Blue Zones 2.0. They've seen an increase in life expectancy of up to 20 years since 1965. So they've really turned around and they're different because it was a mindset and it was thoughtful by the leadership to make changes to the environment from a policy aspect, from a walkability aspect. So they've set up their community so that it's easy to walk places. There's lots of greenery. There's places to gather outside and meet with friends and family. They've encouraged people to live in multi-generational housing. Healthcare is set up so that people are seen before there's a big chronic illness. And then there's some other things throughout the environment that's just set up so that, people are fostered into this longevity with, again, not even thinking about it, just living in that community. And that's super powerful. So that's kind of the differences in the environment. One's more cultural, set up over generations. The other one is more thoughtful and forward thinking of how do we create this environment to foster the longevity.
Okay. So what you're saying is that in these natural blue zones, people like are designing the health more naturally, but do you think in places like Singapore, people ever feel like the health is being designed for them, or do you think this still feels natural?
It can feel designed, and that's kind of important to not, you don't want to go in and just be telling people what to do. But our kind of take on it is going in and giving people better and more options. So it's not taking away options from people, but it's giving them more options and making the healthier choice the easier choice when it comes to these options. So how do you create it so it just feels natural and feels like something they want to do? So hey, maybe they can drive their car if they'd like, but also wouldn't you rather walk down like a beautiful path with lots of trees and greenery and say hi to your neighbors? So it's kind of that trade-off of it's not taking away or being restrictive or telling them what to do, but it's like, here's a amazing way that will help you get healthier and feels better doing it. And so it's kind of that mindset of it's not trying to tell people what to do, but just give them the opportunity to choose what's best for them.
Blue Zones has worked with over 75 communities in the US. So, how did that scale happen? And once a town becomes a Blue Zone community, what actually changes in the everyday life for people that live there?
So it started with a project in Albert Lee, Minnesota. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now. Albert Lee is like 45 minutes south. And the idea was kind of from Dan Buettner, the founder originally. How do you take these things that he found in the blue zones, these environments, these things called the Power Nine, which are these common characteristics we found throughout, which are things like plant based eating, walkability, purpose, social connection. And how do can you apply it to the United States city? And so we started in Albert Lee, and it was working with the local community leaders, government, large employers, health insurance companies, and then all the community members of, how do we make these changes happen? So then we send in a team that looks at all of their policies, the setup of their community, their future planning, and kind of create a blueprint of what we think could lead to longevity if they made some changes based on the research and other projects we've done. And so then that's gone up throughout the community and all of the different aspects. So you look at like a restaurant, for example, it's all these small changes that people don't even necessarily think about, but add up in a big way. So it's here in the US, if you order like a sandwich or something, you typically get French fries or chips, but instead, let's give them a side salad or fruit and they can ask for the chips or French fries. Instead of putting a basket of bread on the table with a bunch of butter, they have to ask for that. Salt and pepper are taken off the table because people always over salt and pepper their foods. And so then we go into schools and we do similar things. Are the kids able to get healthy options for breakfast and lunch? Are kids able to walk to school if they want? Is it safe to walk to school? We've set up things like walking school buses where a parent or a teacher walks from house to house and picks up the kids and they all walk to school together. Workplaces, it's looking at the paid time off policies, the sick leave policies. Are there cafeterias in the work sites? Are they able to get healthy food? So you look at each small aspect of the community and make all these little changes and nudges. And then when you take a step back, you see that there's just all of these environmental changes, as we were talking about, that lead to health and longevity. And again, it's giving the people more options. So they could still go out and get a burger and french fries if they want, but there's also all of these amazing other options that they can choose from that can still drive to the grocery store if they want. But we hope that there's a new bike lane or bike path or beautiful walking path that they can walk to the grocery store and see their neighbors and things like that. So that's kind of how it's rolled out. And communities have been loving it. There's been drops in childhood obesity, drops in smoking rates, really measurable change in a lot of these communities. So communities keep reaching out to us and jumping on to join, and it's been great.
Okay, so what you're kind of saying is that there are like multiple options still available to these people, like, but the healthier option is just made easier or more accessible to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So when these health focused changes roll out, how do the people usually react? And who do you think adapts more easily and who finds these changes confusing or hard to adjust to?
And there's always a group of people that are first to adapt who are already like really interested in health and well-being and maybe have been trying this in their community themselves. Oftentimes we go into these cities and communities and people are trying amazing things, but everyone's kind of working on their own and giving it this umbrella of like the Blue Zone Project really gives them the opportunity to work towards something together and kind of all get working in the right direction. So those are the type of people that immediately are like, sign me up. I want to volunteer. I want to be involved. How can I help? But then there's a lot of people that, I mean, depending on their age or if they have a disability or something like that, who are kind of stuck in their home and they don't see this as an opportunity for them to really be involved. But it's all about kind of meeting those people where they are. So we're trying to think of them when we're making street designs. Is this accessible for everyone? When we're having gatherings, is everyone notified? Are people are able to make it? Are there ride sharing opportunities? Is it in a location that makes sense for the whole community? So we try to make it just so it's this all inclusive thing that anyone in the community can really touch in some sort of way. And that's also why it's so important to be involved in every aspect of the community, whether that's schools, workplaces, faith-based, grocery stores, restaurants. Because at least at some point you're going to interact with pretty much everyone in the community. And maybe they don't even embrace it as much as maybe those first individuals who are all excited to get, involved, but they'll still see the effects of it and be touched by it in some way, even if it's just a small nudge or change throughout their day-to-day life.
Okay, so you mentioned a few factors like age or disability that could affect this for some people, but do you see any specific differences across age groups or income levels that might make it more accessible or less accessible?
That's always hard. I mean, like, for instance, buying healthy fruits and vegetables, that's often at a more expensive store. Oftentimes, there's what we call food deserts, which people live in communities where, they're doing a lot of their shopping at like a corner store or a grocery or a convenience store, someplace that wouldn't have fresh produce on a day-to-day basis. So that makes it easier for people with means and access to vehicles if they want to get out to those bigger grocery stores. But that's something that's always being thought about and being looked at of how can we meet everyone everywhere? And you even start to kind of consider, what are they already doing and how can we help assist with that? So maybe getting fruits and vegetables is difficult, but almost every culture person knows how to make beans and rice and make beans and rice taste very really good, and beans and rice are shelf stable and they can be incredibly healthy for you. So maybe it's just teaching people how to cook beans and rice and make it even healthier versus trying to get them to get these fresh produce and fruit. So it's kind of thinking differently about what are they doing, how can we support what they already know and what they already like to do and can do, and get them more access to that. So maybe it's cooking courses, or maybe there's been places where there's like school buses that have been outfitted with refrigerators, and so those drive into these communities with food deserts and give them opportunity to buy fresh fruit and produce. So yes, it can be difficult when some community members have more means to be able to get out and get involved, but so many of the changes that we do too are trying to be free. I mean, a lot of it is more places and parks to gather, more social events that are just people getting together and talking, maybe sharing a meal, potluck style. So it's not these expensive supplements or workout programs or workout machines or subscriptions. It's nothing like that. It's these small changes that hopefully everyone can adopt in some way.
Okay, so a lot of this work involves policy and design. So, how far do you think governments and institutions should go in shaping people's health choices? And where do you think the line needs to be drawn?
That's a hard one and kind of depends, I guess, on the country you're in or your government, the institutions. But I personally would say so you don't want to be restrictive, like we were saying. It's not telling people not to do this, not to do that. We live in this healthy community. We don't want what you're doing coming in here. Kind of that, like, we call it finger waving, like telling people exactly what to do, or overbearing, or create health and wellness as like a status symbol. I think that's where it gets concerning, or like overly monitoring people like, hey, you're not as healthy as we it would expect you to be. You need to do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's just a huge overstep. So what the needs to be done is influencing by more opportunities and more choices rather than more restrictions and more telling people what to do.
So, finally, with Gen Z growing up around fast food, fast lives, and screens, how do you see ideas like Blue Zone staying relevant over the next 10 years?
That's a great question and something we should talk to Gen Z about more. One thing with I've seen, at least in my experience interacting with people of Gen Z, is they are interested in options. So what I don't know, maybe previous generations would think of like, hey, I'm gonna go get fast food and that's gonna be McDonald's or Burger King, KFC type of thing. But if you give them the option of say like a healthy plant-based fast food or fast casual restaurant, they might often choose that one. A lot of Gen Z, at least here in the United States, isn't getting their driver's license as early as other, or if at all, as other generations. So how do you set up ride sharing or public transportation or walkability, bikeability to kind of meet their needs? So again, it's like finding out what they're passionate about, what they like to do, how they work, how they think, how they live, and kind of meeting them there at what they're doing. So even if that's you mentioned screen time, even if that's creating social groups online that then meets in person once a month. Like things can start online and then come into the real world. And then setting up spaces that they just want to be and interact and leave their house to go to. So whether that's like a third place, which is like a gathering place, like a park or a town square or something where that's free and accessible and you can just be and hang out there. And that really draws people out of their home and gives them an opportunity to just kind of interact with their neighbors or their friends and things like that. So it's hard to say exactly what we should be doing for them. I think we need to talk to Gen Z and see what works best for them and then kind of create and design their environments that those nudges and health outcomes just kind of come from what they're already doing.
Okay, so what you're saying is that they won't necessarily push back, but rather reshape these ideas in their own way.
Exactly. Yeah. And just kinda meet them where they are, and I mean, technology keeps changing, maybe there's an interesting technology in the next 10 years that can be utilized to help. I mean, I've seen a lot of millennials or even Gen Zs pushing back on some of the technology and getting, like instead of a cell phone, getting a home phone that's connected to their wall just so they're not always online. So I think we might see kind of a shift from technology and a bit of a pushback from that, and people wanting that opportunity to connect in the real world and eat healthy and gather and move naturally and just be able to walk, have a walkable community, live close to friends and family, and just experience that kind of environment.
Okay, Sam, thank you so much for this conversation. What really stayed with me is that health isn't just about what we choose, but also about how our environments quietly choose for us. And on Shadows of Progress, we're always asking the same thing. When systems move forward, who do they support and who do they leave struggling to keep up? Because even when something is healthy by design, it's always worth asking at what cost. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.